Okay. I think this is on.
You have to,
Yes.
you have to hold it up.
I'm going to have to hold it. My arm's going to get very tired, but that's okay. So, this is Mom and Dad, Joan and Bob Rose, and just going to ask some questions from this book called Mom's Memories that Mom filled out a couple of years ago.
A couple, like 10?
No, it wasn't that long ago. But anyway, the answers I found were short.
Abbreviated.
They were brief, and so I thought I would see if I could get a little more information by asking in person. Okay, so we know about your brothers and sisters. You each have one sibling,
Yes.
right?
That we know about.
That you very nice. Okay, so Mom.
My brother was Richard, Dick, and he passed away many years ago. I think it's been about 18 or 19. And he was 69. I was the first person in my immediate family to live to 70. And that was a long time ago.
Wow. And Dad?
I have a sister by the name of Audrey, otherwise Odd, and she's older than I am, my big sister,
Mm-hmm.
and she lives in Oakland, and she's, for an old gal, she's in reasonably good shape.
And did your siblings? They were both older than you, and
Yeah.
were they good and protective, older brother and sister? Did they pick on you, or what kind of relationship
My
did you have with your
brother.
siblings?
Picked on me until I was about, I would say 12, maybe even older. I think my brother thought I was the worst thing that ever happened in his life. Apparently, I was the obnoxious little sister who always wanted to be part of what he was doing, and you can imagine how he loved that. He didn't. But as it happened, then we finally grew up and we became good friends. It took many years.
Uh-huh. And how much older is Aunt Audrey than you, Dad?
Was it 3 years?
3 years?
4 years.
4 years. 3 or 4 years,
Well,
depending from how you count.
well, 3 years and 11 months.
Okay.
And
So-
maybe it's different having an older sister than an older brother. Older brothers are famous for.
Well, I'm sure,
Picking-
but
picking
not
on.
never having had one, I can't say. I don't have lots of memories of interaction. It seems to me she used to include me when I was really small with her friends. And then, being a girl and me being a boy, we went our separate ways. But,
Right.
Seems to me she was always, she was there to help me when I needed it.
Did you have nicknames as children?
You mean individually?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Dad. Well, Mom, you wrote Joni Pony.
Yeah, that's what,
That's cute.
I forget who called me that.
Your mother?
Yeah, and I think my father, both.
And how long were you called that, like into
Oh,
adulthood?
about 40.
Really? Okay.
Well, no, I was
I never heard it.
35 when my mother died.
But she always called you that.
Yeah,
Aw, I never knew. And besides Bobby, did you have?
No, Bob or Bobby was, either one. In my age, any Robert was called Bob or Bobby.
Right.
And I know now Robert is called Robert. I don't know why people don't seem to have nicknames anymore, but I noticed that with kids. Larry is a Lawrence. And I was corrected once when I called the Lawrence Larry. Kids, seem to like the formality for one reason or another. Although it makes me think, when I was young, we were formal. We got dressed up for going to temple or something. Now you go see kids in temple in shorts and Levi's. Different world.
It is a different world. Yeah. Now they're wearing flip-flops in the White House.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen
yeah,
that.
I couldn't believe that.
I didn't see that article.
Well, there was some girls' team, I think,
Yes, it
was on it.
like
the girls.
field hockey or.
Yes, and
Yeah.
was it just one girl or several girls?
I don't remember.
I think
That
it
was-
was maybe just one girl, who showed up in flip-flops. But she did get attention.
Yeah. What was the naughtiest thing you ever did as a child? That you either got caught doing or didn't get caught doing? Do you
I
remember?
have to think about that.
Well, see, the ones I can think of, I can't repeat. Oh, I remember stealing some things from the drugstore.
Oh. Did you get caught?
No,
Huh?
no, I was good at it.
And it led to a life of crime.
Yeah. That's why I never went into criminal law. I had empathy.
Were you were a good girl? You weren't
I
rebellious?
guess I was
or?
a good girl. I really cannot remember doing anything too terribly naughty, but perhaps I've repressed it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I used to have fun killing bees. I would and ants. I would take a magnifying glass and burn them, and they'd go pop.
Really?
Yeah, I love that.
Oh my.
You didn't know your father had a sadistic nature.
Well, no, I guess not. Were your parents disciplinarians, or were they, pretty easy on you? Were strict or?
Well, my father was, I was the baby of the family and his little girl, and I could wind him, or, is that the telephone?
That's the job.
And,
Who's it from?
I don't know. Anyway,
Something go hell and go.
he had a temper,
Uh-huh.
and he was a big man, and I think that some people were afraid of him. I never suffered from that, and I could wrap him around my little finger. And my mother was a little more of a disciplinarian, but she was a very sweet lady, and she, apparently I really wasn't that bad. I didn't need all that discipline. My poor brother, on the other hand, really got it from my father, particularly.
Huh.
It was awful.
Oh.
Yeah. It was sad.
Yeah, speaking of discipline, the only really time I remember discipline in our house was with my poor sister, who had a date with a Catholic kid, and it was in high school, and folks wouldn't let her go out with him, and he came, and I knew who he was because he was a big man at the high school. My dad sat him down in the living room and explained to him why they couldn't have a date, and I felt so sorry for my poor sister. In our house, was stairs, and I know she was upstairs. She could listen to the whole thing, tears coming out of her eyes. I don't remember ever being disciplined.
Wow.
It's nice being the youngest.
Yes.
You
Well.
know.
Yeah, I remember being disciplined, but maybe I was a little more
Well,
challenging.
Ricky still talks about all the times when I wouldn't let him out of the table if he didn't finish his dinner.
Yep, got to finish your plate. Were you close to your grandparents?
I was very, particularly to my mother's parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they lived in San Jose, and we lived in San Francisco, or then later in Oakland. And I would spend the greater part of my summers with my grandparents. So I was very close. And with my father's parents, who were older and really old school, I was not as close. But we saw them often, and I was reasonably close.
Is that the summer? Are those the summers when you got so close with Aunt Helen and Aunt Jeannie? Were
Yes.
they were down there?
Yes, they lived in, pardon me, in San Jose, and I would spend a great deal of time at their house.
Mm-hmm.
And, Aunt Jeannie and I are just 14 months apart, and Helen is, I think, 5 years younger than I. And so, we all became very close.
And Dad, what about you? Did you have
I had two sets
family
of
dinners? And...
two sets of grandparents. my dad's parents lived in well, both my dad's and my mom's parents lived in Denver, which is where my mom and dad came from. And my dad's parents, I don't know how old they were when I was old enough to remember them, but they seemed to me like they were
Old.
yeah, old. And they smelled, and I, both Audrey and I, we never liked being around them. And eventually they came out and lived in California. Of course, I was older by then.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather was an amazing guy. Apparently, he had, been very religious and into the Talmud and what have you. And when my dad and his sister and my aunt Ethel bought them a house, which they moved into from Denver so they could be closer to family. And there was a little recess by the fireplace in the living room. And my grandfather asked what that was called, and nobody could tell him. And so he got a dictionary, and word by word by word, until he came upon niche.
Oh my God.
Isn't that amazing?
So, talk about a dedicated, but he was hard. I think my grandmother hated him. It was one of those arranged marriage kinds of deals.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, then they both passed away out here. And my other grandparents, I only knew them really when I was very young with my grandmother, who then later died in a traffic accident when my grandfather was driving.
Oh.
Apparently his fault.
Oh, boy.
And I think Audrey was closer. I think she had actually gone back and stayed with them. And then he remarried, and I didn't much care for his new wife, my new grandmother. And
Was that Sarah?
yes. But anyway, I really was never around them that much that I was never close.
Mm-hmm.
And probably should have been, but it wasn't.
Were all of your grandparents American born?
I think my grandparents were not, but came over to the United States as very young children.
Mm.
I don't remember exactly how young. I'm glad you're doing this, because I feel very badly that I don't know more about my grandparents' early years
Mhm.
and their origins. But it's remarkable. My grandmother, my mother's mother, who had, I think, very little education, spoke English beautifully, no accent, her grammar was impeccable. And my grandfather had an accent, her husband.
Mhm.
And then both my father's parents had accents.
Oh.
And I honestly, I don't, I don't know why I was not more curious as a kid, but I guess in our generation, we were just the opposite. We didn't want anything to do with foreign.
Right.
I would guess they were probably all foreign born, but I really don't know.
Mm-hmm. Huh. So since I don't have memories of either of your sets of parents except for Grandma Etta, of course, who I have a lot of great memories of. Tell me about your parents and their lives, how they met, and what they.
Well, my
What they
mother
did.
and father were half first cousins, so any quirks that I have, you can chalk up to that.
Half first cousins.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, I had a great-grandfather whom I never knew, who apparently his wives kept dying. I think it was all legitimate, so they told me. And so by these various wives, he would have children.
Ah.
So then my mother, my father, and mother, I guess, shared one equal grandparent.
Okay.
That's what it means.
Right.
So, in fact, even then, apparently, they had consulted a geneticist, just, and excuse me, the geneticist said that what will happen is that any good genes, should be handed down, but also any bad genes. And I have often wondered if some of the health problems that I have had have been because of that. Who knows?
Hmm. And so they knew each other because they were family. They
Yes.
traveled in the same circles.
Yeah, they grew up together.
Huh. I see.
And I can't tell you how my folks met. I know they were both in Denver. It's funny how they didn't talk much about it. Even my dad was in the Army when in the First World War, and I never could get him to tell me anything other than he repaired trucks.
Huh.
It's funny, they just, those were things they just, I guess weren't comfortable about talking
Right.
about.
But on both sides, they were love matches, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's see. What will we talk about next? Did you ever run away from home, Dad?
No, but I'm going to run away from you for a minute.
Are
I
you-
want to get those messages.